And he will never back down from the hostile fake news media. He's not afraid.
But why won't former President Trump debate on ABC News, the one he committed to with Biden? Harris said she'd show up to that one.
As Donald Trump continues to break his word and refuses to commit to debating Vice President Harris unless the debate takes place on the Fox propaganda network, even a fed-up Newsmax is publicly calling out Trump's cowardice to the face of Trump's campaign spokesperson. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video, starting with this juicy one, this delicious one, courtesy of Newsmax of all places. Now, as you know, Newsmax has a reputation for being even more right-wing than the Fox propaganda network. But ever so occasionally, you have flashes of good journalism, strong questions from Newsmax hosts to Republican officials and MAGA Republicans in particular. It's very rare. It's even rarer on Newsmax than Fox, but occasionally it happens. And we actually have a situation here. So Karoline Leavitt is one of Donald Trump's campaign spokespeople. She's very much like her boss. She's constantly condescending and arrogant and bloviating and insulting the opposition. And she has the unenviable task of trying to hype Donald Trump as this, larger than life figure who's afraid of nothing and nobody and who will take on anybody at any time, at any place, but also has to defend Trump's decision not to honor his commitment to debate the presumptive Democratic nominee, in this case, Vice President Harris, on ABC on September 10th, even though he previously agreed to do just that. So we're going to play this clip and unpack it together because it's a fed-up Newsmax host saying, okay, well then why won't you do this?
And he will never back down from the hostile fake news media. He's not afraid.
But why won't former President Trump debate on ABC News, the one he committed to with Biden? Harris said she'd show up to that one. Do you have an answer for that? Does he have an answer for that?
Yes, we do. Well, first of all, that debate was committed between President Trump and Joe Biden. The race has changed. And also,
so you can see how utterly not confident she is. She's clearly unconfident, right? Because she just stammered her way through. I mean, the debate has changed. And you can hear from the tone of the Newsmax host as well, where he's kind of perplexed. Well, if you fear nothing and nobody, and if you're going to aggressively take on the fake news media, then why not honor a commitment that you've already made? And this is a talking point that you hear from right-wingers, cope from right-wingers. They say things like, well, that commitment was made between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, except not quite. As a journalist, Matthew McDermott points out, he is a Democratic surrogate, but he makes a very good point. He says, keep seeing a talking point from Trump supporters that Trump agreed to, quote, debate Biden, end quote, on ABC. That's not accurate. Trump agreed to debate terms that invite any and all candidates who meet a polling and ballot access threshold. The terms did not specify Biden. The terms of the ABC debate have remained the same. Absolutely nothing changed. The only thing that's changed is the candidates who meet the terms. Trump backed out for one reason. He's afraid to debate Kamala Harris. There's no other explanation. Here are the terms of the ABC News debate. You'll find that despite Trump supporters' attempts to claim that Trump only agreed to, quote, debate Biden, the name Joe Biden is mentioned 0 times in the debate terms. And he's right. So if you actually look at the article, nowhere does it say Joe Biden. Literally, if you hit Control F, it comes up 0 times. All participants must meet the requirements outlined in Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution to serve as president and must have fulfilled the statement of candidacy with the FEC, the Federal Election Commission. All participants must appear on a sufficient number of state ballots as certified by the Secretary of State or the relevant election authority in each state to attain a majority of 270 electoral votes in the presidential election by September 3rd. All participants must reach 15% support in 4 separate national polls ahead of registered or likely voters. And it goes on and on and on. You have to remember, at the time that Donald Trump agreed to debate President Biden, neither of them were the official party nominees. Donald Trump became the official Republican nominee after the first debate on CNN, but before the September 10th ABC debate. There has been no official nominee. There's a presumptive nominee, but the convention has not formally nominated even Vice President Harris, even though she's clearly secured the commitment of enough delegates to become the nominee. She will become the nominee, but that hasn't happened at the convention yet. So the cope from MAGA is just simply not true. Number one, let's be very clear. There was no formal agreement between Donald Trump and Joe Biden to only debate one another. They were the presumptive nominees at the time. They agreed as the presumptive Republican nominee and the presumptive Democratic nominee to debate. But again, no specific terms as far as people are concerned. It was just any candidate who met all the criteria. The vice president meets the criteria. So when MAGA is saying that, well, it was just specifically to Joe Biden, literally nobody else, they're lying. And so I want to play another Newsmax clip here talking about a potential debate between Vice President Harris and Donald Trump and why Trump refuses to debate.
Donald Trump was saying anytime, any place.
But that was to Joe Biden.
I guess now that you have a candidate, you have a candidate like Kamala Harris, it seems like he's afraid to debate her. And he's trying to find a backdoor, a way to make it seem like he's ready to debate, but he's not. And that's really unfortunate because some of the questions that my panelists here had asked or said about Kamala, a good way to find out would be a debate. So it's unfortunate that Donald Trump is putting all these strings attached to debating because it would be great to see. But I don't think that Donald Trump would do too well. You have Kamala Harris, a prosecutor against Donald Trump. What is he known for? Shooting from the hip and just riffing. Yes, he's really good at that. He's very entertaining. I've seen some of the rallies. But as far as substance, it's scant. And Donald Trump.
It is scant, right? This is something that we've talked about time and time again on this channel. You know, Donald Trump is hyped up as a good debater. He's such a good debater. He is certainly a good performer. I mean, I personally don't find him a particularly effective performer, but clearly millions of people across this country do. So I can't take that away from them. Millions of people disagree. They clearly are entertained by him. That's subjective, right? They're entitled to that opinion. But his merits as a debater, Donald Trump lost every debate he's ever been in. To the extent that he that he won the debate against President Biden, he actually didn't. It's just President Biden did terribly in terms of communicative style. He actually tried to answer questions and did indeed engage on substance, whereas Donald Trump never did. Donald Trump insulted, he bloviated, he never spoke substantively about foreign or domestic policy. He very rarely even attempted to directly answer the questions. Usually he would go on question B, he would go back to question A. On question C, he would go back to question B to try to get the last word. And he lied an unprecedented number of times. That's really not a masterclass debate performance because he's a profoundly stupid person. He's just a very gifted liar in terms of the ability to lie casually beyond the ability of others to fact check him. So again, it's important that Newsmax host be recognized for making valid points because he did. Now, again, Trump has said, listen, I won't do the ABC debate, but if you agree to debate me on Fox News, I'll do that. Which, number one, I don't know if the vice president called his bluff. I don't know if he'd follow through with that one either. He could come up with some other excuse. I mean, clearly making commitments and breaking them. Donald Trump is a pathological liar, a serial philanderer, a malignant narcissist. He lies all the time. He breaks commitments all the time. So this idea that he would actually follow through on his Fox proposal, it's not entirely certain that he would. But Jake Tapper recently brought out a really good point about just set aside the obvious ideological bias that Fox clearly has towards Trump. There's also another reason that the vice president may not want to honor or call his bluff, even if she believes she would defeat him on Fox News. There's also the little fact that, Fox News recently suffered an unprecedented penalty in a court of law by way of settlement. They actually settled this case for defamation on Trump's behalf.
This comes after Trump did, in fact, suggest that he's not going to abide by that debate, which was supposed to be with Biden on ABC News. But he was saying ABC News is not a fair forum, which I think is silly. And he's pushing for a debate on Fox instead. We should note, last time Mr. Trump ran for president, Fox was so pro-Trump in their coverage, they ended up having to pay a $787.5 million defamation suit because they were amplifying Trump's lies about the election. And one of their anchors, of course, leaned on the decision desk to flip Arizona from Biden to Trump and to slow walk Nevada. That's the fair network that Trump is pushing for.
So, again, fantastic point by Jake Tapper. It's not just that there's a right-wing bias on the Fox propaganda network. That's bad, but potentially manageable. It's the fact that Fox has no credibility in terms of impartiality, right? Journalists and reporters, they obviously have their personal biases, but they have an obligation to try to curtail those biases in favor of facts. So if you prefer a particular candidate, but the facts don't favor that particular candidate on whatever it is you're reporting, a good journalist will report those facts clearly and fairly anyway. It's kind of like, use a sports metaphor. You like a particular team, but if the ref makes a fair call against your team, you should respect that fair call and not complain about it. And if your team loses fair and square, it doesn't matter that you prefer them. You should recognize that they lost fair and square and not either deny it or try to sweep it under the rug. That's how a journalist should behave. So let's say Fox has its ideological bias. In theory, that's all manageable. But they recently had to pay nearly $1 billion because they made exorbitant lies and signal boosted exorbitant lies about the 2020 election in Trump's favor, to the extent that they defamed a voting machine company. Again, defamation suits are so hard to prove and certainly harder to win in this country than basically anywhere on earth. So the fact that Fox settled and paid, cut a check that robust clearly shows that they felt that they would lose that case, or at least stood a really good chance of losing that case in court, and would potentially have to pay even greater penalties than that. So I don't know what the right decision here is with respect to Harris. I can game it out either way, but I think if she elects not to call Trump's bluff and refuses to debate on Fox News, she's morally justified in doing so. Hey, not only do you have a right-wing bias towards the other candidate, but you all are so dishonest as a network collectively that you had to do something that CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times have never had to do, which is pay nearly $1 billion in a defamation settlement. So you are morally disqualified. I think she can make that case. The other reason, though, that Trump might dread facing off against Kamala Harris is because the polls are in, folks. And the polls show that most voters believe that Donald Trump is too old to be president. 51% for Trump, more than half the country believes he's too old to be president. 78 years old. He's the oldest presidential candidate in human history or in American history, whereas only 12% believe that about the 60-year-old Vice President Harris. So he's losing on the age war. Moreover, a majority of Americans also believe that Donald Trump, about 50% of Americans believe that Donald Trump lacks the mental fitness to be president. 49%. That is a staggering sum. Other polls have it as over a majority. I mean, if Donald Trump is too old and too mentally unfit to be president, why on earth would he want to stand on a debate stage with somebody who is not too old to be president and is mentally fit to be president, Kamala Harris? Food for thought. Love the polls coming in against Trump. It's funny to bring these up to MAGA Republicans. And I think it's great that even Newsmax seems fed up with Trump's hypocrisy and excuses with respect to debating the vice president. Let me know what you think in the comments.